The age-old debate, cinematography versus videography. What is the difference? Why are we talking about it? Why does it even matter? Do we need to be talking about it? Isn't it just words? Why are we even making this video? Let's talk about it a little bit. I want to make a video here real quick talking about this debate between videography and cinematography, because this is something that comes up a lot of times in the filmmaking community, and different people have different opinions and ideas of what the words mean and why it's important, and like what this means as a filmmaker and which one you are and that kind of thing. And this most recently came up because some of you might be aware that I had an image that went viral on Instagram, and it was a picture of my wife, top and bottom, and one of them was videography and one of them was cinematography, and I was trying to make a point that I will get to in a minute. And it's interesting, the image got shared like all over the internet and got ripped off with zero credit, of course, and people posted it all over Instagram and Reddit. But the problem is that they didn't take my caption with it. They just took the picture and then like said different things about it that were not what I was trying to say at all. And so then, the whole thing got out of hand. And it's funny because like a lot of people were just like loving it and praising that image and like my comment and everything, and like it got tons of engagement. And then there was like a lot of people like hating on it and whatever, and then it turned into like this whole meme frenzy and everything. And I'm sure some of you guys saw all the memes and it was hilarious. I was laughing my head off all day. So there's obviously this a very polarizing debate within the film industry about what videography is versus cinematography, and I want to kind of dive into that a little bit. Now let me make the disclaimer here right up front that I'm not saying that one is better than the other in any way, shape, or form. The way that I look at it is that there are two separate approaches to filmmaking, and we'll get to how that came about. But the reality is that there's not one is better than the other. You've got videographers who are really amazing at their craft and create amazing stuff. And then you've got cinematographers out there that are not that good. I think a lot of people try to create this like perception that like cinematography is so much better than videography. The reality is they're two different approaches to filmmaking. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, where do these words come from? Well, if you go back like 20, 30 years ago, there was no such thing basically as videography. I mean, the word existed, but in today's terms, it didn't really exist. If you wanted to make video content, we'll say, or you wanted to make movies or TV shows, like you had to be on a set with big cameras, you were working with film, you had to have crew, like these cameras were massive, the lights were massive. Filmmaking in general was very prohibitive, right? Not just anybody could get into it. You had to have your foot in the door, you had to have a lot of money, you had to be with the studios in order to make films. And that's really like the beginning of where cinematography comes from, right? A cinematographer typically is on set is the person who is in charge of the camera department. It's the director of photography, the photography of the film, the person who's in charge of the camera, the lighting, the actually creating and crafting the image. And so that's who the cinematographer is. So if you go back to like maybe like the 80s or 90s when digital video started to become a thing, I remember when I was growing up around that time, and we had even then we had camcorders that had like little cassette tapes in them that were still shooting on film technically. But I remember digital started to become a thing. And as digital video came along, this idea, at least what we look at right now, of videography started to come along. It was making videos, and not necessarily like being a cinematographer on a set, but it's like just making videos at home. And so the idea of being a videographer or making videography came along as being kind of a one-man band type thing, that you could go out and you could just grab a camera and you could create video content, right? And so it was digital. And so for a long time, the terminology really was like cinematography is shooting on film and videography is shooting on digital video. That was the thing for a long time. That was the delineation, is that one was film, analog, and one was digital. But nowadays, if you look at it, like basically everything is digital now. Like there's still people that shoot on film occasionally, but like far and wide, most content out there, movies, commercials, TV shows, whatever, are being shot on digital video. And so it's not really fair anymore to say that you can't be a cinematographer unless you shoot on film, because then that would be like claiming that the best cinematographers and DPs in the world are not cinematographers because they shoot on digital video. And so nowadays, those terms, cinematography and videography, have kind of evolved, right? They have a different meaning now than they used to be. And really, nowadays, it's not about the medium, film or digital, it's more about the method. So at least the way that I look at it, a cinematographer is the type of person who's on set, who's controlling the scene and the lighting and the acting and finding the right actors and set design and everything like that, and actually like controlling and creating a world. Whereas a videographer is a different approach where you're just capturing what is happening in front of you. Now, the way that I always put this, and I think it makes the most sense, is that a videographer captures the world as it is, whereas a cinematographer creates a world. You'll notice that when you watch cinematography, you watch movies and high-end commercials and that type of work, that there's usually this feeling where it doesn't feel like the talent and the story that you're watching play out in front of you is happening right in your world. It feels like it's separated from you. There's a fourth wall in cinematography, similar to theater, where the wall between the stage and the audience is that fourth wall where it makes the stage feel like another world. That same thing happens with cinematography, and it happens with how you craft your image. When you take a camera as a videographer and you go out and you just shoot what is happening without adjusting any lighting or choosing the talent or choosing the set design or anything like that, and you're just very basically turning on your camera and hitting record, it's gonna feel like, naturally, like it's something that is happening within our world. It feels like you're almost there. It's like watching a sports game on TV. It feels like you're there. Whereas with cinematography, when you're watching movies, you're watching The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Marvel movies, like whatever kind of movie, it feels like it's another world. So that's kind of the way that I define the difference between these two styles of filmmaking. And like I said, neither is wrong, neither is right, neither is better, neither is worse. It's just two different approaches to how you do things. Videographers can create amazing work that's inspiring and eye-catching and incredible, and cinematographers can also do the same thing, but they can also do it very poorly in a way that doesn't have a really interesting story and that doesn't catch your attention. So that's kind of the way that I look at it, and that's how I divide it. But it's also really important to understand that the difference between the two is not such a hard line. It's not so black and white. And a lot of people will try to throw rocks and say, oh, that's videography and that's cinematography, when the reality is most things that you see out there are kind of a combination of both. So videography and cinematography to me is not a hard line, it's more like a spectrum. So if we look at the extremes of the spectrum, on one end there's an extreme of videography, which is what I would call literally just taking a camera, turning it on, hitting record, and going. Okay? It's kind of like what people do with like home videos. When my kids do something cute, I turn on my phone, I hit record, and I start recording it. I'm not thinking about the lighting, I'm not thinking about the composition. Well, I might be subconsciously. But for the most part, I'm just recording what's happening in front of me. And that to me is, on an extreme, videography. Now, when I'm taking video of my kids, the moment that I say, oh, actually go stand over here because the lighting's better, or I say, actually, let's move this way because the sun's over there, that is where I'm starting to cross over from being a videographer and transitioning into cinematography, right? So it's more like a spectrum. The more you start creating a world, the more it becomes cinematography. So at the other extreme, on the cinematography end, you have cinematography, which is where the filmmaker has complete control over the scene. We're adjusting the lighting, we're adjusting the positioning of the camera, we're adjusting the composition and the camera settings, and everything to do with the image, the set design, the props, the wardrobe, the talent. Everything, the team is working together to create an entire world where they have complete control over that so that they can create that world. And that's really what it comes down to when it comes to cinematography, is the word control. The difference between cinematography and videography is just that. It's control. If you look at Hollywood, Hollywood spends a lot of money on movies in order to have control. The reason why Hollywood movies cost hundreds of millions of dollars is because they want to control everything. They're shooting in sound stages where they're building these huge sets with green screens and all this technology and all this new stuff, and like getting the right talent. They have access to whatever people they want on set, and they pay a lot of money to get the right actors. They will pay whatever it takes to get the right wardrobe, or to, create the right makeup, to do the right set design, to get the right props. Like anything that they need to do, whatever they need, they will spend as much money as they have to in order to have complete control over that scene or over that movie, that story, so that they can tell it the way that they want to, and so that they can create that world that happens where when you're watching it, you get lost in that world. And so when it really comes down to it, that is the difference in my mind between videography and cinematography. Now, why does any of this matter? That's a really good question. Why do we even talk about this, and why do we need to even debate about it? Well, the reality is that from my perspective as a commercial cinematographer, as somebody who has built a business, built a production company, working with high-paying clients and getting those clients and building a production company out of it, I've found that if you want to grow your business as a filmmaker, you need to focus on learning the principles of cinematography. The principles of cinematography are what are going to take your work to another level, where you create the professionalism, you create the results, you create the look, and you create the style and the type of story that you need to be successful and to get high-paying clients in this world. My whole approach teaching filmmaking to videographers and filmmakers is to focus on creating really high-end cinematic looking videos that you can then attract high-paying clients with. And when I say cinematic, I don't mean cinematic B-roll or just getting some footage of your dog outside and throwing a teal and orange color grade on it, or getting your wife or your girlfriend chopping up some food in the kitchen or something like that. You'll see that stuff out there. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's some amazing people that are able to make some incredible stuff with just like very limited gear, which is cool and it's exciting. But if you really want to get to the high end of filmmaking and producing high-end commercials and getting these high-paying clients, you should focus on learning the principles of cinematography. So there you go. There's my best take on the difference between videography and cinematography, at least so that some of you can learn what it's all about. And then for those of you that are wondering what my take is on it or what my opinion is, there you go. It's all out there in the open. Now, if you're somebody that wants to learn how to get high-end brands to hire you to create really high-end story-based narrative commercials for them, I've got an entire free training where I walk through exactly how to do that. I'll throw the link down in the description below so you can check it out. Just click on that, open it up, and go watch it. It's a free training. It's 20 or 30 minutes, like real quick, but I go in depth into exactly how I go about getting high-paying clients, getting them consistently, and then getting the type of clients that are going to allow me to create really beautiful story-based commercials, which is the type of work that I like to shoot because I feel like I am an artist and I can create really beautiful, amazing work and still get paid really well for it, which for me is the goal. So if you want to take a look at that, links down in the description below. If you have questions about this video, feel free to post them down below and let me know, what is your take on the difference between videographer and cinematographer? How do you look at it? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What is your opinion? Comment down below. I will see you guys on the next video.